Welcome back to another episode of the B2B Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Trainer. I'm excited today to share this supersized episode with my guest, Bob Lambert. Bob is the founding partner of the Samurai Business Group, which is a sales and business development performance firm. They've been helping small and mid-sized businesses drastically improve growth for over 2 decades. Bob's background also includes building and running a number of startups, including a marketing agency. Plus, he has his own radio show and podcast. Bob's tagline is, "It is time to quit selling and start helping your prospects buy." And that's at the core of the conversation that we have today. This episode is great for all founders and business owners that are really serious about growing their business. We talk about everything from strategy to specific and actionable tactics that you can implement today, as well as in other topics, but it's all about growth, sales, the type of folks you should be looking for in sales roles, and really thinking about how to set up your business for scale. I think you'll get a lot of value out of this conversation, so enjoy. And now, on to the interview. Hey, good morning, Bob. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, great to be here.
Hey, happy New Year to you. I know we're not supposed to time date our interviews, but start of the new year, so let's start fresh.
Especially after this last one.
Exactly. I don't know if anybody's been looking more forward to a changing year than most of us, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So anyway, welcome. I've been definitely looking forward to this conversation. To get us started, why don't you give the audience just a little bit of your background and what you're working on today, and then we'll get into it.
I was very fortunate to start my career with a global 50 little company called Nestle. It was as I say, it was a sweet deal. And anyway,
no pun intended.
No pun intended. So I spent my first decade of my career there, and I had the privilege of being on marketing team that launched a major brand called Taste Your Choice Coffee. Ended up migrating out the sales organization. That's what started my sales career. After 10 years, left that and actually entered my entrepreneurial part of my career. So for the next 15 years, I founded and co-founded 3 companies, and mainly in services space around CPG and marketing and that kind of thing. That's what kind of led me into. Then I did a very painful thing. I went back into corporate, which you know about because we share that in common, which became a little company called Experian. Only I was on the side that got acquired, and then ended up going out into a couple other successive things that I did, more entrepreneurial, and then founded the Samurai Business Group. Actually, I had in mid '80s had a marketing agency here in Chicago called the Marketing Edge. And 2 things of note there is we were the guys that I'm the Nerds guy, Nerds Candy. So we launched that nationwide, double the size of Wally Wonka brands in 13 months with the launch of that one product. And then we had the privilege and the honor of launching Muhammad Ali's International Fan Club.
Really?
So, yeah. So it was just a little bit of the marketing chops. But actually, when I was at the agency, when it came together for me, Brett, because I'd worked both in marketing and sales, that's when I really started using the term business development and bringing those two, because those two are inexorably linked to each other, as you know. You can't do one without the other. And marketing's a tough thing. It's amorphous as to how you determine what that is. Sales is pretty definite. You got a scorecard with that. And so, but I felt that all the successful campaigns we did, all the successful launches, and in my experience, having those things synergistically together, man, that was really success. And that's what because we were a marketing agency, we were agnostic as far as any of the disciplines. Okay. We did advertising, sales, promotion, public relations, and direct marketing. So that was kind of the dawn of the marketing agency. And
interesting.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great time, especially working on kids' products. We had a blast. And a lot of our clients were marquee clients, Procter & Gamble, ConAgra, Quaker Oats, on and on the list goes. Then started to branch out into other types of industries, finance, airlines, on and on, those types of things too.
Right.
And then it led me into basically took a year hiatus out of that just to kind of catch my breath and see. And then ended up going into a couple startups, rolled out of that. And that's when I formed the Samurai Business Group in 2001. So we're in 20 years into that.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
For one.
Yeah.
And just curious, let's stick on that for a second, because I didn't realize necessarily we shared kind of the agency background first and transitioned into sales. So I do 100% agree. It gives you a different perspective,
Yeah, it does.
especially where we're heading today. But too, so why the pivot from, basically agency, some CPG to B2B sales, right? And maybe it didn't start that way 20 years ago, but I'm just kind of curious what gap you saw that you decided I'm going to start a business and go help these folks.
Well, this is going to sound kind of corny, but I had wonderful training. I've been through a tremendous amount of training, a lot of coaching, a lot of mentoring. I really value that. It's really helped my career. It really set me on the right track and discipline. And I was just terribly disappointed when I see what companies were doing with young people. It was just like they were throwing them in the deep end of the pool, not even giving them floaties, sink or swim. And well, that kind of can build some character and really be kind of some testing. But the fact of the matter is, it's like a revolving door. So
Right.
I was out to right that wrong, you know, and that was the genesis of Samurai Business Group, to tell you the truth. I mean, when we started, I wanted to really work with young people, lift them up. Well, I found out pretty quickly they couldn't pay me, so
Right.
I had to revert back to doing the kind of things. And kind of what kind of gravitated towards agencies and people like that, because as you know, in that business, it's up and down, the revenue line. It's
Right.
you're only as good as your last account. And if a big account falls off, and what I found was this kind of constant jerking back and forth, where all of a sudden you lose a couple. Okay, everybody on the sales side here, and we got to gen up some new business, and then you get a couple. Okay, now everybody back over here, doing the work of the client. And so it was a natural thing for me to come in, smooth those out, because I'd lived it and I knew what it was about and how to do it, and focus people on having a consistent business development program.
Right.
So that was kind of led the way. But simultaneous to that, I got to tell you, I was enormously blessed, because at that time, DePaul University was forming their Center for Sales Leadership,
Right.
and they were vetting training companies. And I happened to know one of the guys that was the Triumph that really started that thing. Through that, he asked me if I wanted to throw our hat in the ring with, what we developed. And I said, yeah. And sure enough, guess what? There was two big firms, that get selected, and little old Samurai. And
Awesome.
of course, the part of that process is because we really kind of flipped the coin on sales process or business development. And that was, we focused on the buy, not on the sell. Imagine that. Now, today, I'm hearing all this, the buyer's journey and everything like that. Well, we've been
Right.
doing that for over 25 years. And a lot of that germinated out of my marketing background, because as you know, you start with the consumer, the end user, then drive that too. And a lot of it had to do with emotion. We knew that theoretically, but now we know it absolutely empirically. People buy emotionally, they justify that through intellect, that decision. And it's a whole process. So we set out with world research about that from the buyer's perspective, which is no surprise how they rated salespeople, you know,
Right.
which is hasn't changed much. And so that was really the whole genesis of this thing. Well, lo and behold, the kids really took to it. That we were teaching down at DePaul, and we became an intricate part of that program. And so we were asked to do a semester long case study, and using the buying decision model as part of that. So they built a case. They had to go in there. They had to use the buying decision model to execute it up in Salesforce.com to get their grade. So we vetted that for a couple of semesters, and lo and behold, Harvard Business Review comes knocking on the door. They wanted to do an expose on DePaul. They find out they've got this sales curriculum. They were enamored with that, and bang, they did a whole big article on that. That led to some national press and some other stuff. And all of a sudden, DePaul gets a knock on the door from all these colleges and universities that have some part of it, some sort of a sales curriculum. And they go, hey, what do you guys got? What do you got? Well, that case that we built with DePaul was the first thing that they sold. The 36 college universities now are using that in their sales curriculum.
Oh, that is
So
fantastic.
it's bigger and better, Brett, than I could have ever imagined, when I set out to right or wrong. And we are so blessed to be a part of that. I'll take no credit for any of that stuff, because that's all to DePaul and their credit. But we
Yeah,
work very collaboratively with them.
you had to be there and provide it and have that insight, which goes back to, I have conversations all the time with entrepreneurs and founders looking to start businesses, and part of them want to lead with technology, and I said, no, start with the problem you're solving first and work back.
Yep.
And obviously you saw that problem, DePaul saw that problem. Now finally I think I still in and out with, I can't remember the name of the association that keeps track of all the colleges that now have curriculum around sales management, sales leadership.
Well,
So
actually, DePaul does that.
okay.
They're the number one program in the country, because they have both the graduate and the undergraduate can take sales program. I met a lot of DePaul, MBAs that said, boy, I wish we had something like that, when I was in school, because, marketing is, sanctioned and it's certified, and that's the big thing. But geez, without sales, you got nothing, you know?
100% right. We could actually probably do an entire episode on this aspect of it. So I'm going to make a note that
Yeah.
we'll circle back, because I do think it's an important topic, but I do want to kind of segue back to what you had talked about with the buyer journey. And, one of your taglines is, it's time to quit selling and start helping your prospects buy. Right.
Yeah.
Which I love that. And maybe it's because, again, we both came from a demand gen and a marketing background and aligning it with sales. But, and if we want to tie that now to founders, right? So if you look at the typical entrepreneurial journey and assume they didn't get $10 million in funds pre-seed, that, the founders have been selling, or the co-founders have been selling.
Right.
And now it's time to start thinking about, building out an organizational approach to sales. So with the buyer enablement in mind, what are your thoughts, and what are your general recommendations to founders as they're starting to think about building out a sales org?
Early and often, early and often, you know.
No, I agree. And again, I think one of the things that we talked a little bit about off air was that it isn't just creating. I think the default for a lot of founders is, hey, I'm going to go hire some salespeople, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the right answer, may not be the right answer. Maybe it's building more demand with marketing. But, I'd love to get your perspective on, how do I start thinking about making sales an organizational responsibility versus just a sales function?
It's pretty basic stuff with me. It's called sales. If it ain't coming in the front door, nothing else matters. I don't care how good your stuff is. And you have to have a mindset about revenue generation. I mean, when you get down to the whole point of this whole thing is, how are you generating revenue? Now, there's a couple different paths, as we know, to do that. But if you're in the business of selling to human beings, which I believe we all are, not aliens or robots, because that's my tagline. If you're selling to human beings, I got something for you. If you're selling to aliens or robots, I can't help you, And again, with the mindset that it's about the buy. So how are you really going about helping people to buy? This is really great. This is the thing I tell my clients all the time. Buyers will tell you everything you need to know to help them to buy from you. They will. And that basically is doing two things. And when I lecture down at the schools at Northwestern University of Chicago and DePaul, I tell, and I've got a very short window of time. They're saying, hey, give these kids something, these are life lessons. And that is, ask great questions and shut up and listen. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in those proportions. And I think that's been the bane of sales existence for a long time, because we're long on training and information and knowledge about the products and the services, and we're short the sales competency piece of this and skills. Those are two different things. They're both important. You got to know what you're talking about. But at the same time, you got to be able to understand what's going on the other side of the table there, and draw that out of people, so that to see if there's a fit. I don't have sales meeting. I have conversations to see if there's a fit between us. I don't pre-qualify anybody. I mean, there's certain things, if they don't fit in a certain way, that, for us, but, I look at this as, I started on that side of the desk. Why am I here? What problem do you think I can solve for you? Right. And so, to your point about what you ask about, the mindset of, entrepreneurs and founders, and we know this, they're all in their head about their stuff. Right. And they think that, oh, if I go out here and get some salespeople come in here and slap it out. First of all, none of them are going to work as hard as you do. That's another mindset that you have to get. Okay. You're the owner, you're responsible. Don't expect salespeople. I mean, they're driven by a couple of core things, right? Making money, getting satisfaction, making a win, those kind of things. And there's certain types for certain roles that you're going to have in sales. So that's the other part of this. Be very careful about how you go about recruiting. And that's one of the things we do in our management program. We lead with that. How do you really go out there and recruit great salespeople? What's the vetting process? And then, really important, especially for startups and small companies, what's your onboarding process? Right. That's the biggest failure we see with most companies, and especially the smaller ones. They don't have a codified onboarding program to get these people off to great. You got to set them up for success. Don't expect, even if it's a veteran salesperson, they're coming into a different environment. We've seen the failure after failure. We take somebody out of a Fortune 500 company where they got all the access and all the tools and all the support, and then you plunk them into a mid-market company because they came up and you think they're going to be, a rock star. And we see a lot of failure with that because they don't have an entrepreneurial mindset. They've had a lot of stuff handed to them, and now all of a sudden they've got to do all the work that somebody else is doing for them.
Right. No, 100% agree with you. And I think the default a lot of time for entrepreneurs is, oh, this person's been in the industry for 20 years. They could sell it. Right. Which I get. And one of the things that I caution the founders is what's your objective with this hire, right? Because if you hire one salesperson, and with your samurai business name, I think you'd agree with this, but we'll find out, is sales is still a hand-to-hand combat, right? It's
Yep.
one-on-one. I
Yep.
can bring you in, you hit your quota, you're going to help me grow the business, but you're not going to help me scale my business, right?
Yep.
So there's other things you have to do within the organization to set those folks up to scale. So I guess if I'm looking at first hires, right, there's two pieces: people that bring a Rolodex of network contacts, and then there's folks that I think you work with, the younger folks that are building the right skill set to help to drive it. So I know there's probably no one answer, but I'd love your perspective on those two as you see these orgs starting to grow, or even in the mid-market where you're trying to get them to think differently about growing their business.
You set it out. It's really get clear as to what the role is of that person that you're bringing in. Okay. And set the proper expectation for that. Because oftentimes what I find is, you got this great resume and all that stuff. That doesn't mean they're a fit for your organization. Okay. So you got to really get your act together as far as the whole interview process, vetting people, getting the right people in front of you, and then have an organized way of going about drawing out. Because salespeople are really good about telling you what you want to hear. Just imagine that, right? Especially veteran salespeople, right? They're going
Yeah.
to tell you what you want to hear. And also you got to make it attractive for them. I mean, if they're really, I don't know too many rock stars, they're going to work for small mid-market companies that haven't got something that they see that's really going to be what they're not getting now. And generally speaking, there's a high price tag with that. But particularly for mid-level and upper level salespeople, if they're tired of the grind, if they're tired of the nonsense that happens oftentimes in a lot of larger corporations, then you sit there and say, what is it that they're really looking for? What is it that they're going to bring to the party here? The other thing too is you got to be very careful about, they look good on paper, they talk a good story. Do your homework, man. Do your background check, because what they did in the past doesn't mean that that's something that they're going to be in the future. And you got to blow away some of the smoke.
Yeah, 100%. And I
And
think to that point, some of the most successful salespeople, they're not cold calling. They're really good closers. And to your point on enterprise, you may be getting 90% of your leads are coming inbound. You just
yeah,
have to qualify and move them through the process. And in small business and startups, you may not have that luxury.
yeah, and I don't know any, really rainmaker that loves jumping out of bed in the morning and doing 100 dials. I
Right.
mean, it just doesn't happen. I tell clients all the time, outsource that to pros that really get it. Use those quality people like that to be your guys that get in front of that buyer or that prospect, and let them use really what their skill and talent is. It's to move it through the process and get it to a positive result. you know
Yeah.
Now with younger people, what I would share with you, and I would say this about any hire in sales: you hire for attitude, because you can teach them everything else, right? If they are willing and able. That's the other two things you want to make sure. Are they willing and are they able? That is part of a little bit of a glitch with mid-tier company or mid-service or higher service. Are they willing and able to learn? Are they willing and able to be trained and be coached and those kind of things? Because don't take it that, okay, I hired you, boom, here you go, there's the desk, there's a computer, go off and hit the ground running. That's another recipe for failure.
Yeah.
And what happens, we see oftentimes, is people do not chop off the dead wood quickly. There's an old adage, right? Hire slowly, fire quickly. And in sales, there's a scorecard. Unlike a lot of other positions in the company, there's a definitive scorecard. So what we basically have the saying is, you don't keep them any longer than their mother did, to birth them.
Okay. I like it.
A 9-month horizon. I don't care how long your sales cycle is. If you got the benchmarks in there, 30, 60, 90, 120 days, you're going to see the trajectory, how they doing. If they're on the right track, they're hitting the benchmarks. Okay, you've got somebody that you can write it out with, even if you got a 2-year sale or a year and a half sale. But you also have to compensate them. Good salespeople aren't going to come to work for you just on straight commission or a low salary and then everything's back ended. Yeah. And with the younger people, what I would share with you is, if they've got, again, that attitude, you can see it in there. If you're hiring for a hunter, if you're hiring for a farmer, that's a different ballgame.
Right. That's a great point. And it is really two different skill sets. And
Bingo. You
one
got
of
it.
the things that I've been seeing and or advocating a little bit is looking at kind of the role of the salesperson, right? If it's somebody that's coming inbound, even if you're a hunter, but yet you're still closing new business, right? The one of the skill sets that I've started to recommend for is problem solving, right? It's you've got to think problem solving and facilitation, helping them get through the process as quickly as possible. And what was in
I know this is going to sound old school. It's really called critical thinking.
right,
And I think,
right,
frankly, and it's not a knock on anybody, but I see there's a generational issue with critical thinking, and that's one of the things that we bring to the party through our curriculum. You definitely get a heavy dose of critical thinking in this, because this isn't, I've often used the term because I am a Navy veteran, but this is SEAL Team 6 stuff. This is heavy lifting, what we go through, and it's a matter because of time. If
right.
you want to be skilled and become master, we talk about mastery all the time. Our program's a mastery level program. So, you got to spend time to do these things. You got to practice, you keep doing. There's not any top athlete. And look at Michael Jordan, how many hours this guy used to practice and throw free throws. Oftentimes when you see the game films where he'd be there closing his eyes and throwing that ball in, just visualizing it in, but how many reps was he doing? He'd show up early and stay later than anybody else.
Right, and he had more
This
talent, right? That's a perfect example.
is a gifted athlete, but then there's the other component of that, right? And that's the management component. He didn't have any rings on his finger until Phil Jackson came in. And really Phil basically put those role players and let Michael know there's no I in team. Okay.
Exactly.
It's a team sport. And if you get a good team together around a great rep, boy, that's when it can really, really work out for you.
Yeah.
It's not an easy process. And people
No,
think it is. It's just not.
and I think that's where some of we lived through the, early 2010s through 2015. It was just a different time with B2B. You could, there was more of that,
Yep.
I don't want to stereotype too much, but the frat boy mentality with inside sales or used car sales approach is just aggressive and loud and fast. And,
Yep.
that doesn't work anymore. And going back to your critical thinking piece, I'd actually done some work with a kind of a high growth software startup. And
Hmm.
one of the interesting things that they had done at the time was they actually into their SDR program, which is business development, usually entry
Yep.
level for a lot of companies. There were two Ivy School grads that they
Hmm.
brought into those positions where you don't typically think Ivy
Yeah.
School and I'm going into sales.
Right.
But their thinking around this was, hey, they've got the skill set that we're raising them to think critically around problem solving, right? The customers that we can provide all the non-value add stuff, features, benefits,
Right.
find that. And what their approach was, hey, they're going to learn the product inside out because they're going to hear directly from prospects and customers, what works, doesn't work, what are they trying to use with this thing, and it worked. They were their top two performing, SDRs, and then quickly moved in through the organization. So I guess that's more one reinforces your point on critical thinking, but two, don't think of this as a just an entry level position. This is frontline with your customers, and as you're looking to grow the business, these are the folks that if you hire correctly can take on additional leadership roles beyond just the sales function.
You brought up a good point, particularly with what we do when we take it into companies. We look at anybody that touches that customer as in business development. So I've been, outside sales, inside sales, customer service, project management. I've even been training people in the accounting department
Okay,
that have to
interesting.
interface with people, collect bills, or talk about that. And we had a situation where a young lady was actually in inside sales or support to sales, and they have more interface with the clients when you think about it. There's a profile for those people because they're nurturing, they can get in there, they deepen the relationship, they can hear things, but they're head down oftentimes just solving a problem or taking care of a customer need. What we did is we opened up that perspective with them that they're a part of the business development process and that they've got some skill sets that they could use to help open up opportunities. And this just happened last year where a young lady was in that position, went through our training, started asking what we call the Socratic method of questioning, and all of a sudden uncovered a major opportunity, threw it over the fence to the rep because we teach the continuity of conversation. She could talk shorthand to him. Here's the apparent reasons I found, da, 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 da. Here's the contacts. He goes back in, didn't even know anything about this. He goes back in and they nail a $200,000 sale just because this young lady was trained and opened up to ask other questions,
No, that's
and
fascinating.
that was huge. But that's the thing, the continuity we look at. We want that ecosystem. We want to build out anybody that touches that customer now understands, and they get excited. They get excited because they know they were a piece of that. And that, again, this is life stuff, to be honest with you, Brett. It's not
No,
just
you're
about
right.
sales. This is
It is
all
a
life
life
stuff. Yeah.
skill and learning to do it right. Because whether you're selling a product or yourself or
Yep.
reading people or understanding it, you're so right on this. And that, circling all the way back to the curriculum, I think it should be a required class for folks that are coming out, not just a major or a elective type of an approach. But again, you keep leading me perfectly into the next topic. So thank you,
Sure.
because I do think sales has become an organizational approach, especially as the org is trying to grow. Two pieces to this. So as I'm trying to grow my startup, say from 500,000 to 10 million. It's a big leap. You got to get some process in place. You got to get a lot of things churning. But what I think is often overlooked is, call it post-sale or customer enablement, right? A lot of the times customer
Yep.
success is an afterthought. Hey, we got them in onto the next logo, the next customer, let's figure it out. Where, there's revenue opportunities within those, one, keeping them, and then an expansion is just a lost, I don't know if it's a lost art, a lost skill, or just folks aren't comfortable having those conversations. Say, hey, you're using our product quite a bit. There's a couple other things you could use. So I'd love to get let's start with that. Get your perspective on organizationally as you're trying to make that giant jump. How do we get all the teams to start thinking about, revenue growth?
We're talking about two different things here, okay? And this is what we coach a lot on. Number one, I build out a pyramid for current business. Okay. So net new business within a customer. What are those opportunities? What are the ones that you really can see some opportunity with? How do you uncover those? Right.
Yep.
You have the other side of this is brand new prospects, new logos, and whatever you want to call it. Right. So those are two separate things,
Yeah.
basically. And we look at that as part of your strategic account plan. So in your strategic account plan, you've got a lot of information about the current clients you have, and you're constantly building that out. We have a whole methodology around that as to really what you're looking for and really grafting out, marketing out, much like some of the other sales system, who are all the players, and what roles do those players play? On the other side of that is we look at, prospecting. So not most, but it should be responsibility of most reps, the care and the feeding the current clients they have, that they can't just be pure hunters. Because if you go throwing it over the fence, and these people should be strategic in a business. So I look at your real responsibility when you have accounts is you got to be strategic in that business. Okay. You got to be thinking about their business. You got to know their business inside and out. You got to be bringing stuff to the table, because if you aren't bringing value add to the table, making suggestions today, you're gone. Now, these buyers are smart today. They're better educated. Number one, they got all the assets and the resources to get to, because before the internet, they relied on salespeople. You held the keys to the kingdom. That's how it was easier to get appointments and stuff. Now they know more about you, your products, your services, your competition, your pricing before you even walk in the door. Okay. So they're not interested in them having to throw up all over you about their business and everything else. You better be pretty educated about that. There's a reason why you're there in front of them, and that's what you need to understand. So when you look at the two different, aspects of this thing, it's about new net business within a client or clients, and understanding and determining. And I have a whole methodology there. It's almost Pareto's law, really, 80-20,
Yeah.
80%
Yeah.
of your customers are going to be doing 20%. And that was a big wake up call for a client that we've had now for this last year. They didn't realize, and boy, when they started digging into it, because I did the analysis on it, and they go, holy crap, we didn't realize that. But what they also didn't realize is all the potential down line that they weren't really cultivating, because they were too absorbed with doing, customer service, which some of that stuff should have been thrown over to their support people instead of them being in it too much, because they weren't really mining gold. And
Right.
also they were more reactionary than proactive. And so the other side of that is just really getting focused on this, because things change. I mean, we saw it this last year. You got mergers, acquisitions, anything can disrupt the business that you have in hand. And you better have plan B. Okay. Now, those can be a positive thing for you, because if they're getting acquired by a bigger company, and that's a gateway or an entryway for you, because they keep the people you've been working with, and they can sing your praises and maybe take a look at that. That's great. But I got to tell you something. In my experience, it doesn't happen as often as you'd like it to.
Right.
So you better have plan B. Okay. Plan B is either how are you moving those clients up that might be B clients to you, lower level clients? How do you move them up? Is there the potential for that? And then get over here in the column of prospects. And again, I stratify the prospects. I have a simple rule, okay? And that is this: 5A prospects, 15 Bs, and 20 Cs. 40 accounts total. That's it. Okay. And why the 5As? Because there's 5 days of the week, and you better be doing something with each one of those A accounts every day of the week. Okay. Whether it's 5 minutes or it's a half a day, whatever, moving that, because you either move them up to being a client or you move them off or down to the C's where you're dripping on them or whatever the case might be. But the effectiveness of this is that you're focused. Okay. Now your B's are your farm club. Those 15 are your farm club. And so again, this isn't static. You got to be constantly looking at, how do I prioritize this? If one of my A's drops off or we don't get the deal or whatever, who am I moving up?
Right.
Who am I cultivating and moving up? And again, that's, you got to put your head into this. You got to be able to understand your business and how does this work? I mean, just like a pro sports team, right? You got an A player gets down, gets injured. They're reaching down to the farm club, pulling somebody up,
Right.
or they're pulling them from another team, right? So a lot of the analogies are very simple, just the same as what you would look at pro sports. The other thing I share with business owners is this. I ask this is one of the first questions I ask. What's your view of sales? Is it an asset or an expense? And I have to tell you, that's pretty revealing when you get the answer on that one.
Right.
And then basically what you have to do, and then I play a little game. And I just say, hey, look, let's just imagine for a minute that you're the owner of a pro sports team. What's your favorite type of sport? And they tell me. I say, okay, great. Now you have a big bag of money. You can go out and recruit anybody you want, any top player you want to play, right? But to entice them to come play with you, you tell them, hey, you come play for me. No coaching, training, or practice. You just show up on game day. And then I ask them, how would that work for you? And they go, well, that wouldn't work very well. Why not? Well, because would you agree also that that's pretty much the assets of your whole company are those players, especially with a pro sports team, right? Yeah. I said, why are you treating your salespeople like that? You're expecting these guys to be world-class athletes out there, and you're not even training them,
So good. And there's so much we could actually unpack there, because I'm with you. And again, one of the themes that I keep hearing from you: have a plan, right? Things don't happen by accident. And, I actually just wrote a little post not too long ago on, I had a boss back in the day that used to preach, AR&E, acquisition, retention, expansion. Have a plan for each of them. And the earlier you can start that as you're growing, the better off it's going to be, because most companies are reacting and trying to figure out what they want to do after the fact, and make it clear. I think the other piece that we haven't touched on, which I agree isn't necessarily the priority, is compensation's got to align with what you're looking for.
Yep.
And too often, to your point, a commission only isn't going to work, right? Just you're not going to get the right people for it. And
well, I talk about follow the money. What's the behavior style? What are they going to be incented by? Not all people are incented by money,
right?
And you can't focus on the money. What's the money for? That's really what, when I coach and when I set up the team, what's the money for? Hey, Brett, you want to make $200,000. That's great. That's just paper. That's just an exchange. What's the money for?
Right.
Well, Bob, I got 2 kids that be going to college in the next 8 years. Oh, okay. So part of that's going to go there. I have elderly parents I got to take care. I got the dream vacation my wife wants to go on. What's the money for? Because that's the driver. That's the true motivator. This might sound silly, Brett. I tell people all the time, I can't motivate a person. I can't motivate anybody.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Okay. Unless I'm holding a 9 mil to your head, and that's out of fear, but that's going to be temporary, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But I can't motivate you. If you intrinsically, you don't have the motivation, I can inspire you. I can equip you. I can encourage you. But if you don't have that, that within you, I can't manufacture that. That you're absolutely right. There's a lot to this. And as you know, we've had a few conversations, so this could go off on a lot of different tracks. But that's why I say, look for attitude, in people. Are they on fire? And you can tell a lot of that by, we're a big proponent of doing assessments before hiring, and not as a guidance tool, because you can't use that as an absolute for hiring.
Right.
But it certainly is a great indicator of who you're dealing with here and where they're going, because they can't fake a lot of that stuff on these assessments. They can't game those. They're done too well. So I'm a big proponent, especially when you get down to the top candidates, and you go through that. But I'm with you. And management's a huge part of this. The training, the management, the coaching, the mentoring. We kind of fell out of favor with that. You mentioned something about your old sales manager. My first sales manager, when I went out in the field with Nestle, was a Korean Marine veteran. Actually, when it got cold, this guy had frostbite because he was stuck on a hill over in Korea. I'm going to tell you something. You could cut your hand on this guy's crease in his pants. Okay. His name was Bill Cartledge. And Bill had something he pounded into me right from day one. If you haven't got a plan, don't get in the car.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
You haven't got a plan, don't get in the car. You know, I teach a simple method too about the ABCs. And that basically is, what do you have control over and you have choice over? Okay. A stands for attitude, B stands for behavior, C stands for commitment. So on a three-legged stool, as I used as the metaphor, if any one of those legs is kind of out of balance, what do you got? They're wobbling. Now, it's not going to be perfect every time, but check in on your ABCs. And I have my clients put on a Post-it note, get it in your face. How's your ABCs? That's the first lead question I'll ask them when I coach them. How's your ABCs?
Yeah. No,
Because sales is a game that's played from the neck up, just like golf.
And it even goes back to your thing, right? 2 ears, one mouth. It starts with being able to listen. And the other thing is, it's a cliche, but listening is a skill, right? Just don't listen so you can speak next, right? When they take a breath, but really understand what they're saying, because to your point, they're giving you the clues on where their pain points are. And if you just go straight back to what you're leading with, because you thought that's what the solution was, your sales and your conversion rates are going to be terrible. And you're right. It just goes down to a fundamental approach to growing the business.
Well, it's just like the name samurai too. When you look at the samurai, the whole culture of that, right? They live by what they call a Bushido code. And one of the code was live in the moment. Okay. So 3 of them we adopt is honor, service, and commitment, because we think obviously in sales or business development, you better have all 3 of those: honor, service, and commitment. But the other one was why there was some of the fiercest fighters that were ever known was the fact that they had no past and they had no future when they went into battle. They were focused in the moment. Honor was extremely important, because if you dishonored the dojo or the emperor or whatever, if you weren't in battle, basically, and they learned this as part of the code, what they called seppuku, which was basically hirikiri. They had a whole ceremony around that they had to learn if they dishonored somebody. If it was on the field of battle, the katana came out, their head got lopped off. Okay. That's how important it was. So I think that's another part of this thing, is not only when you take this on in a salesperson, honoring not only, the company you're working for, your integrity and all those things, but honoring yourself, being a person of honor. Because as you know, sales is a dirty word. That's why you don't see it on business cards anymore. Right. Have you seen anybody handing out a card, whether a sales rep or anything? No, their account rep, their business development, whatever it might be, because there's such a stigma around the name sales or what sales is. And it's a myth. Just like down there at DePaul, a lot of kids, were in the marketing department and all that. And then they got this, they have a whole different idea of what sales is until they go through a orientation period or they get some information on it. And all of a sudden, whoa, wait a minute. You mean I can make all the money I want to make? I can do this and I can do that and I can use these skills? Yeah, you can. And it's all transferable. That's the other part about it. These are all transferable skills.
Yeah, 100%. I think, we've kind of touched on it. It is a life skill. And I look at, my oldest daughter's a technical recruiter. That's sales, right? You're selling a position to 2 different people that you got to marry. And I think you're right. I do think there probably still is a stigma with the name sales, but I think it's getting better just because of the way the roles evolved, and it's had to evolve, right? One last quick story I'll give you on that, because this is at the enterprise. Microsoft basically reorged their entire sales, and even deeper than that, go to market. And what they basically did was took their best sales engineers or engineers that were really good customer facing and moved them into the sales org. And because what they wanted was their salespeople to have really good conversations with prospects that could talk about the solution. And I know that's more of a technical sale, but I think the fundamental transitions, right? You have to be able to talk to your prospects about their problems and
that's one of our sweet spots is technology. We work with technology engineers, architects, and all that stuff. And part of they never see themselves in sales.
Right.
Okay. Well, I'm not a salesperson. I'm going to say, well, you are. You're probably the best because you understand Socratic method. You understand that you have to solve a problem. So you're great at asking great questions. Okay. All we got to do is transfer that skill up to the front end when you're going out and doing the same thing with class. I can't tell you how many times I've had people with CPAs or attorneys or engineers, and all of a sudden the light bulb comes on. Oh, you mean it's just a conversation that I would normally have with somebody else? I said, yeah, that's it. It's
Yeah.
just a conversation. You don't have to put pressure on yourself. You have to be somebody you're not, because it's all focused on the other side. It's all focused on the buy, not on the sell. It takes an
Exactly.
enormous amount of pressure off of people. And all of a sudden they light up. They're all of a sudden they're trying this stuff and it's working. But the cool part about it is ours is a method. It's not prescriptive. You don't walk, talk, and dance and do this. And like when I came up in some of the training I had, right?
Right.
What we really did was basically said, look, it's a model. And you put your own fingerprints on that model. You use it any way you want. But I can guarantee you, even if you only get it 50% right, you're going to be way ahead of a whole lot of other people. They're coming in, showing up and throwing up and spitting out about all their stuff. And the buyer doesn't care about that. The buyer cares what we call with them, right? What's in
Yeah.
it for me?
Yep.
That's what they care about. And people operate in their own self-interest first. I don't care if you're a hardcore procurement agent or what. And I've had them all, up and down. Some are a little tougher, especially when you get people that are analytical and all that thing. They keep things close to the breast. But you scratch the surface there, and there's human emotion. And that's what we're dealing with. We're really dealing with emotion of what's in it for them.
Yep.
Okay. And I don't want to go on in a big diatribe. The other thing I want to share with you, that to your point about cultivating customers. Okay. And I never went through any of this kind of training. It might be out there now. I know it's with customer service people, there's training specifically on this, but I never went through a sales curriculum. And there may be some of this out there, but we talk about how you create customer loyalty and customer evangelists. To your point, man, there is a lot of gold to mine. People aren't even bending over and picking it up. In the 08-12 downturn, that's all I preach. My mantra was all the time, people aren't buying from somebody they don't know, like, or trust. But
Right.
you've got a natural gift here. You got people either you did business with in the past and they know you, or you have current clients, and there's gold there to be mined, and you're not even, bending over to pick it up. And that is, get deeper with that client. Really understand the client. I can't tell you how many times I ask a sales rep, well, how are you doing with the client? How are they scoring you as far as what you're delivering? Well, I haven't. What surveys have you done? Have you sat down in a quarterly review or an end review? How are we doing? Right. And it's amazing to me. And part of the reason is they don't want to hear. They got fear around what they're going to hear.
Right.
Well, when do you want to know that? Now or when the door's slamming that they're walking out the door on you?
Right.
Right. So, these are fundamental kind of things, but, maybe it's just me that I grew up with this stuff. Take care of that customer. You got to really be in tune with them and understand that. And guess what? They will evangelize you. They will go out and actually evangelize you. And when we talk about that, that leads right back around to the top of the pyramid that we teach about: quality introductions and quality referrals and alliances. Now this whole prospecting thing becomes a whole lot easier when either you got somebody calling you that, hey, Brett told me about you. He said I should talk to you. Or I go to Brett and you go, hey, Bob, I got this guy that I know, he's really having a tough time. And you make a quality introduction for me, or we meet with each other, or whatever. It doesn't get any better than that. It just doesn't.
100%.
It's really about this personal side of selling. I really believe we're coming back around to that. Relationships count.
Oh, they're critical. Yeah. It's so glad. And maybe that's a good way to close this portion. And I'm seriously
Sure.
thinking we need to do a part two where we can get into some of the tactics of it, because I think that's important. But I think it was important to get to the fundamentals of thinking about, your organization as you grow. But the relationship aspect, the one interesting thing, and I've, talked to folks about it as I've been doing this podcast, because this is now, we're in 80 plus episodes. And I thought, being 25 years in the industry, I knew it all, right? I've seen it. I know how this works. But, I opened my mind to it and really starting to understand there's other channels, right? That, and again, in my simple, you articulated much better, but in the world of going after your prospects, right? There's, the folks that know you and know they have a problem, right? All day, every day, those are your A's. Make sure you're focused and going. There's folks that know you but don't know they have a problem. Education, right? How you're helping
Yep.
them. The other flip side is they know they have a problem, they don't know you, right? So how do you create awareness? And then where I see too many people spending too much time, or don't know they have a problem, don't know you, but yet you're still spending calories and time and burning it. And so tying that back to where I was originally going with my point with referrals, that there's a bunch of other business development channels that are now available to B2B companies that I don't think, maybe they were there, just not utilized through referral programs and
Yep.
testimonials. I think back in my corporate days, one of the big things, hey, if we do well, can we use you as a referral?
Yeah. And especially now with video, man, I
Yes.
tell you, I had something just happen to me that I've never, ever happened. This happened late last year. I had a client of mine. We got to be able to go out and have breakfast, and he's a wealth management, right? And quite a success. He's very successful now, but he was really struggling with it when he came in to me because, in that area, that's the most sacrosanct thing to most Americans is their money, right?
Yep.
So you got to be highly trusted. You got to have referral. You got to have credentials. And he wasn't using his credentials because for a big chunk of his career, he was managing a major family's money here. He was a family office and he was
Okay.
managing the money for them. That's a big deal, right? Well, he wasn't leveraging that. That's part of marketing, right?
Yeah.
But finally, the light bulb comes on, and his business goes like a hockey stick. So we go out to lunch, and he says, "Hey, and this has never happened, Brett." He looks at me across the table. And he says, "Bob, would you mind if I, did a video testimonial for you?"
Twist your arm, right?
I mean, I've asked people, and they're not reluctant. They'll give me a testimonial, but he actually went on Zoom, did a video testimonial for me. I think I sent you something on that.
Yeah, you did.
And that's the first time that's ever happened. And that was really sincere. I mean, the guy was talking about, here's what happened. Here's what I got out of this. And it wasn't anything about, here ABC training and all that stuff. What it really was, the revelation of what I was speaking into him was, you've got to be able to make yourself distinct. I don't talk about difference. I talk about distinction. And to your point also about going out, here's where I see the fallacy of this, that you're particularly digital, you're throwing it against the wall and see what sticks.
Right.
Now that might work in some industries or businesses, but when you're talking about high level B2B and all that, do your homework. The other thing too is blue ocean, red ocean, look at all the competition. What is making you distinct, standing out? Do your homework. Your target audience is only this. It's not all this. So I really, really do this hammer in with my clients. Who are your best customers? What the attributes of those best customers? Look at the trends that you have. Who do you really like doing business with? What is it about them you like doing? Why do they do business with you? Really do some reflection on that. And that's really now what we call the sweet spot.
Yep.
That's what you want to look for. And now, because of the history that you have with those people, you look what attracts you to them. Now you can frame out your message. Now you can frame out your message. And all of a sudden, you're going to draw the people to you that basically that message resonates with. You and I were in direct marketing back in our day, right? Well, what I learned very much of the relevant message, relevant audience.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're into cats and I'm speaking to you about llamas, you're not interested.
Right. You may catch lightning in a bottle once, but yeah, it's going to waste a lot of time. And
right.
I think just to kind of reiterate what you said, I mean, it's so much more powerful when a client or a customer talks about you versus when you talk about yourself. And so again, start building that library early and often, and, again, lead with the value and, all that good stuff. And so I think, again, we could probably talk for another hour. So I want to be respectful of your time. So I've got the two questions I always close with. One is, what's next for you? Starting a new year. What are you focused on here?
I'm really pumped. I am just absolutely over the moon about this year because we kind of got assignment with a client that we had about 4 or 5 years ago. And they were sub 10 million. They were making the transition from pieces and parts and tracks, actual selling to actually solution selling. It was actually a technology company. So we work with their reps. They went in 4 years time, a little less than 4 years time, from sub 10 million to over 20. They crested at in going into 20. And I will tell you that they met their number, a bit of a revised number, but they met their number for this year. Now, part of that, and they laid all this stuff at my doorstep, and I said, no, it's your people. I am not going to look. I'm facilitating the information. It's them grabbing and taking it and doing something with it. It's not me. And it's not just out of false humility, but I mean, I truly believe that. If you want to learn something, you want to grab a hold of it and it's working for you, then you're going to take and utilize it, right?
Yep.
So the what happened was they came back and they said, look, Bob, we're scaling. We know we're going to, we're on our way to 50 million. Okay. Well, that's a big jump. And we're going to do that in 5 years. But we know we have to scale this business. And one of the things they came to me and said, we'd like to create a learning university, and I said, great. So we went out. I won't go into big diatribe, but this is the part that's really exciting for me, especially for small mid-market companies. Okay. Here's what they're faced with right now. And this is where I get the deer in the headlights when I ask the question is what's the age group of your organization across the board? Well, you got a lot of aging out. You got a lot of the boomers, 10,000 a week now turning age 65. Okay. So what's that do to your organization? And oftentimes these companies are pretty thinly staffed. They're not deep like a Fortune company, right? Where they got 2, 3 levels down, you can move somebody in. And this actually happened to this company to prove my point. 20 plus year veteran walked out the door one day and not to return. Okay. No documentation of the tribal knowledge this guy had. They were in deep doo-doo. Now, this isn't an exception. I will tell you, across the span of small mid-market companies, this is the rule.
Yes.
And so as I've started to talk to folks about this, all of a sudden it's like it's during the headlights. Hey, if one of your key players walks out and you dies or retires, early, what are you going to do? And so this whole repository of information now, which is phenomenal, it's absolutely designed for a small mid-market company. It's not kludgy like a big LMS system and all that. I don't even want to call it an LMS system because it focuses on personal development. But literally, we can build out that for every column of the business. We happen to be in the business development column, so we're going to build that all out. Within that, what we're doing too is saying, okay, what's the succession plan for key players, right? And also, how are you going to attract younger people? You're a small mid-market company. How are you going to attract young people to come in and work for you? Well, I can tell you 3 things we've learned out of our association with Paul. They want, are you going to give me development and training? What am I going to get? What is your development plan when you're bringing them in? How are you going to onboard them? And again, like I told you, this is the biggest area we see right now, a problem, especially with salespeople, for God's sake. Number 2, what's my career path? Okay. How do you step them through roles and how they can escalate up as far as their career path goes, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously number 3, what's my comp?
Right.
And how you frame that whole thing out. Okay. So you got a better opportunity bringing new people in and get excited about working for your company if you got a plan for them. And this is nothing new, but it's somehow we've walked away from all this stuff. And then that helps you with the succession. And if something happens, now you've got plan B, right? And then to your point, bringing them in at different levels. Now, right now, my client wants to bring in 2 high-level people, 2 top performers. Well, we're going through a whole vetting process to see if they're a fit to come in here and hit the ground running. But guess what? There is an onboarding process that's going to go on for 6 months with them. I don't care what your credentials are, how much you've sold before. If you're not buying into this, because this is our method and model, then boom, because it's duplicatable, it's replicatable, and we've got success out of it. Okay. So that's basically what we're doing here. So I'm excited about the prospects of that, being able to offer that kind of a platform to a company going in, particularly with, the tip of the spear, business development, sales, revenue, bringing that in, driving it. But then we'll have the capability also with my network of building out all the other columns of the business and populating that. Part of the issue with this company is too, because it's a tech company, they have to have certifications. Well, guess what? They've got all these different companies that they have these certifications from. There's no, insight into that as to how well you're doing because there's money and revenue attached to that. The higher the certification, there's more money. And all of a sudden, we can bring all that together and give that visibility. So anyway, that's what I'm excited about is being able to go out and offer now in 21 these academies in a small, this isn't for everybody, but they got to have their head screwed on straight about the future. So if they're growing, they want to scale, they've got to start looking and playing. That's how we do this. And that's the same thing for a smaller company.
Sure.
We can implement that, and that'd be a no-brainer for a smaller company. And here's the cool part. It's priced right. It's priced for mid-market, small mid-market company. So you literally, I can stand this thing up, put a 50-person company in it for 20 grand for a whole year.
And just the ROI on that, again, reiterating for these businesses, because one of the things that I preach is build the infrastructure. And I don't mean infrastructure of technology, even though that's a piece of it and I'll process, but you got to think 2-step chess versus checkers, right? As you're growing a company, and think about building an infrastructure that can scale with you as you go. Now, and if you're early stage, there's 2 of you and you're still feeling out the market and understanding your value prop, maybe a little bit early, but to your earlier point, it's never too early to start thinking about how we're going to do this.
And I know this is the heart of what you do. I tell young people all the time, get a great coach and a mentor. Get in some of these groups, because I'm a big fan of that, these peer groups and that kind of thing. Iron sharpens iron, and you get a lot of perspective, especially if you have a little bit more mature players that are in there, been there, done it. And also just the network that you establish. I mean, wow. the money you can save out of, not stepping on a landmine because of having this kind of experience around you is enormous. They've
Yeah.
been there, done it before, and they have a player that you can go to that gets it, right? So yeah, coaches, mentors, all that kind of stuff. I'm a big proponent of that, especially for young people coming in. One of the companies we work with was a marketing agency. It was just starting their career. I happen to know the young man, and he said, Bob, I want to go through your program. Right off the bat, he no more founded the company, he and a partner. And he said, we got to learn this thing called, we know what we're doing as far as this digital stuff, but we don't know anything about business development. They got in there and they set a goal. They tripled what their first year goal was right out the gate. They tripled it again the second year. And now he's part of a bigger, got bought up by bigger agencies, an A player in that other agency, because now he can scale things in a bigger way quicker.
Yeah. That's
But
awesome.
he's out making rain.
And again, this is something you can learn. It's right. It's
Exactly. But like that, he recognized it, I got to get this right out of the gate, because oftentimes what happens is people spend an enormous amount of money on other things that not really are moving the needle, and getting a skill that they absolutely have to have. And that is sales,
Yep.
business development. And so by the time they get to me, they're out of money and they're out of gas. It's like, I'm sorry, what do you want me to do here?
Right.
You
Again,
know,
build it up front. I mean, and again,
make
it's
the investment up front, and it's not that much. When you look at what people spend with me versus their college education and the debt they're running up, or an MBA, the average MBA, you don't pay that back for a decade, right?
right.
The bill that you ran up on that's if you went to a school, right? So I tell people the investment with me, if you don't get the initial investment with me in a sale or two, you're not a good candidate for this program.
Right. And what I like about your process is you'll know up front, right? You're not bringing in the wrong folks into the program. And even you talk about MBA and the payback. You're one wrong hire from having that much expense. So if not more, right? You got opportunity costs, learning costs, just the pure expense of making the 9-month or the 12-month bad hire. And so
Here's what I'd
there's
share with you, Brett. Tell you this right now, for this little mid-market company, okay, they're going to be in a whole class, above their peers. I asked that owner the other day, who do you know within your, because he's in a peer group within this industry. I
right.
said, who do you know within your peer group that has this capability right now? And he said, I don't know anybody, Bob. I said, these guys are going to be chasing you,
Yeah.
because I'm telling you, that will be your competitive advantage. You're well thought of in the industry. You're a comer, that people know that, and you start implementing this stuff and they're going to really know it. I mean, he's got the president of major corporations giving him testimony. And I'm sitting there going, dude,
That's your most powerful sales engine right there.
I can tell you there's three kinds of businesses, and I've lived all of them, right? You've got the businesses going south, and you know what to do there. You got to cut, you got to bail, you got to do something. You got the businesses flatlining. You're just milking this thing along. And then you have this one like this. I will tell you, of the three, this is the hardest one.
Yeah.
This is the hardest one, because I've made all the mistakes. If I went cautious, okay, all of a sudden I'm scrambling because I got a windfall, and now I'm making bad hires, because all of a sudden I'm doing this and I'm not spending the time to make the right hires. All of a sudden, if I'm over projecting, that's a free fall.
Yeah. No, you're
So
right.
this is the toughest one.
It's a good problem to have, as I say, but yeah, you're basically paving the road as you're driving the car, right? So it's the balance of, but if it comes back, if you've got the right infrastructure to scale, you'll know when you need to start hiring and what other processes you maybe can start automating. And so yeah, it's
Well, it's kind of that mindset, like Daniel Kahneman says, think slow to go fast, kind of thing. And
yeah,
that's really what it is. We're getting to the same point, critical thinking we talked about before.
go circle.
Thinking about these things, because I know a company right now that are on a growth path, a tremendous growth path, and they pull the throttle back. Whoa, let's slow this puppy down. And so they're really having a systematic approach to their growth,
Love it.
because they know what's going to happen if they don't. They're smart enough to get this. And that's the other thing, people get starry-eyed and they see the money and they see all this stuff. And you don't think, to your point, the infrastructure is going to take that. It has to support all that.
Right. 100% right. Again,
Sorry.
good problem to have, but no, I love it. I think that's a perfect way, but I'm not letting you go without my last question, which
Sure.
is, maybe we've already covered it with all the value you've added, but what is one thing, personally or professionally, that you would highly recommend?
Well, I'm going to get a little philosophical, because there's an old rule in speaking, and that is the 3 B's: be on, be brief, and be gone. Okay. So at the beginning of the year, around Thanksgiving, I started thinking about things, and I think this would probably just be good stuff anyway, but just in general. And again, and kind of getting back to this human thing. But my 3 B's basically for frankly, the rest of my life, because I gave this a bit of consideration, that is be grateful, be humble, and be a giver. Be grateful, be humble, be a giver. I think those 3 things are really important for anybody as a human being, but more importantly for a business owner. Be grateful for what you have. I mean, we're living in the greatest country in the world. We've been through a horrific time, unprecedented in my lifetime. But at the same time, I'm extremely grateful that I live in this country. We have what we have. We have these opportunities we have, and we live in a society that is innovative. You know, we're going to figure ways around all this stuff. I mean, to me, this year's a greenfield for a lot of companies.
100% right.
This is
Yep.
huge, greenfield. And look at just what happened, during this thing, how people switched gears. I don't know if you know Mike Lindell that owns My Pillow up in Minneapolis. And
Oh,
what
I
that guy
know it.
did,
I don't know him personally. Yeah.
oh my gosh, what that guy did in 48 hours, he completely turned his whole manufacturing facility into making masks. 48 hours, he had a 10,000 run of masks that day and then 50,000 a day thereafter.
Remarkable.
And guess what happened to his business? The pillow business.
Skyrocketed. Yeah. I mean, you do good things, and, it's like you said, it's not rocket science sometimes what we're doing. And, I love that. And I think, the payback is coming for those folks that follow those 3 B's that they just outlined. And it's just a better way to go through life, right? Now there's shortcuts, and people get ahead by doing things that are in the gray area or, are self-serving, but, I'm a big believer in karma. So,
I believe it.
the more you can give, and, life's just better when you take that approach. So I appreciate you sharing that. I'm 100% on board with that.
Yeah. I know that wasn't, oracle wisdom there, but I just thought to me, I'm just a simple guy, just getting back to basics and fewer things. I like when I help my clients with goals. I help them plan goals in 5 areas of their life, because most people spend more time planning their vacation than they do their life.
That's true.
And so every year we go into the goal planning in 5 areas of your life. And as I tell them, don't boil the ocean here. Don't put 15 things on your to-do list. Max 3 in each one of these categories. And then we use SMART goals, be specific, be measurable, accountable, and all that, time sensitive, and really put meat on the bone as to how you moving the needle. I want to lose 15 pounds. Well, what's that look like?
Right.
I want to make $200,000. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, there's it's a little off topic. I had, Sean Rosensteel was on. He had a new book about living intentionally, and just phenomenal. I mean, again, I got a chance to read it ahead of time, and, I could have probably used that book 10 years ago, but it's along what you're saying, right? It's have a plan and identify what's really important to you outside of just business, because you can't separate the two, whether you're an entrepreneur, within the corporate, whatever it is. Just start being more intentional about what you're doing. So,
and I told a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, I said, if you're married or you have a significant other, they better be in the boat with you, because this is a joint journey here. Yes. They have to be able to be, of the same mindset that their sacrifices are going to have to be made. Because when you step into entrepreneurialism, it's a whole different ballgame. And especially I've seen a number come out of corporate and they can't make the transition.
Right.
As I call them, they're on the juice, they're in the needle, they got to have that. And it's a whole different ballgame when you get out here to be an entrepreneur or be a business owner.
Yeah.
It's just much more multifaceted, and you have to be self-aware. I think that's the other thing too.
Yes.
As a leader, you better be pretty self-aware today.
Yeah, can't argue with that. I think you're 100% right. And even, like I said, even in the corporate world, you should be, right? I think we're in a very interesting time. Again, we could probably do another whole segment on just the distributed workforce and where we're going with it, and the leadership that it's going to take. But if we circle back to your main theme, which is there is a huge opportunity. Keep it simple, but find the right people, right? It's the process. So Bob, I really, really appreciate you taking the time and sharing this with us. I think it's a great way to help us kick off the year. And as founders are looking to scale their business, or you're thinking about starting a business, or even if you're in the mid-market and have a business, this is fundamental stuff. It's not rocket science, but it needs to get done. If you want to grow your business, you don't want to grow, keep doing what you're doing, but if not, take a step back. And so lastly, what's the best place for folks to reach out to you if they want to learn more about the programs, your content?
I'm a
Where's
personal guy. You could go out to the website, and that's Samurai and the bizgrp.com. So it's abbreviated for business group. You can go and reach me at r.lambert at Samurai Business Group. And then, I take personal phone calls. I'm not shy about that. So it's 847-922-1498.
awesome. Awesome, awesome. And to include that in the show notes as well so people can
Yep,
easily find you.
absolutely.
But thank you for doing this. Appreciate it. I think there was a ton of value. I knew there would be as we came into it. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And like I said, we'll follow up later, in the year and go deeper in a couple other topics, I think. But I thought it was important to get the fundamentals out today.
Yeah. Yeah. We can get any area you want to do because there's management stuff that I've got. There's the sales mastery stuff. We call it mastery, both of these programs. And we do that for a reason. Again, when you think about, we use a belt system. So just like in martial arts, how you step
Right.
through belts to get to mastery, which you never attain, but you're working at it. There's different levels of it. And that's really what this is all about. It's really about getting the skills and the competencies. And again, these are stuff that serve you through life. I've got lots of stories about people who come back to me about how one guy, how he got, his relationship back with his 16-year-old daughter because of what he learned in the program. I mean, you can't pay me enough money, buddy, for that kind of stuff.
That's what's phenomenal. And again, that's what one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the program is it's not just sales training. It's more, it goes
Yeah.
back to what you said in the beginning. It's human to human. How do we relate? How do we connect? It's
Yep.
personal, right? But there is skills you have to learn and all that. So
Yep.
uh,
Okay.
appreciate it. Thank you, Bob. We'll be in. Have a great rest of your day and go get them in 2021.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheers.